Immediately on the show, we see how sex and intimacy is a huge factor for a lot of the couples. How important is intimacy in the early stages of a relationship?
It's important throughout the relationship. I mean, it's what forms you as a couple. And I think oftentimes at the beginning of a relationship, we focus a lot on the physical intimacy because, of course, we're thinking about that kind of intimate spark between the couple. But usually, what happens is that as they get to know each other more and more, the emotional intimacy develops, and by that I mean the vulnerability, talking about past relationships maybe, or past hurts, past disappointments, sharing anxieties, insecurities, those types of things. And that kind of helps people to form a deeper, closer connection.
People often worry about getting intimate too early in a relationship. For example, if they get intimate too early, their partner might become disinterested. Is there like a time frame of when to be intimate? Is it ever too early, or can you wait too long?
I think with some of these things, there's no real formula in terms of when you sleep with somebody. We know people that have slept with a person on the first day of meeting them, and they have been married like ever since for many years, and they have children, and they have a good relationship. Equally, we know people that have taken a longer time to have sex, maybe 3 or 4 months, 5 months, and then they've had sex and the relationship has sort of gone to pot straight away. But I think you have to also be true to your own needs, and if you're with someone who just doesn't like to be intimate, then you have to work out whether that's a relationship that you want to be in.
And we saw in Married at First Sight the theme of trying to change your partner. Sometimes it benefited, sometimes it really backfired. When is it healthy to encourage your partner to grow and evolve and change? And when does it become toxic and just a bit controlling?
I think it's like a fine balance, isn't it? So
Yeah.
if you are with somebody, ideally you need to be with them because you enjoy being around them, you enjoy what they represent and who they are. Now, of course, there might be some little, quirks that they have that are irritating or damage your relationship or put you down, and they of course need to be addressed. But if it's like their whole character, who they are, if they're saying things or they're making jokes that you don't find funny, like you have to be careful that you don't change all of who they are, because that's not really fair. And as I always say, there's always someone for someone. So what one partner won't like in you, another partner will find that completely attractive.
There were quite a few arguments in Married at First Sight, the latest series, and often the communication broke down. Why is it important how to not just know how to love in a relationship, but to know how to argue?
Well, I think, a lot of the couples that I work with, one of the main reasons that they split up is because they can't overcome conflict. And I think oftentimes that comes from, we haven't seen that growing up. We haven't seen maybe parents, or we haven't been in a situation where we've seen healthy conflict play out. So for a lot of us, our parents, if they argued or when they argued, it might have been very explosive, and then they wouldn't talk for a while, and then maybe they just start talking about the weather. With relationships, we don't really have that teaching as such, but we have like what I call like more indirect learning or indirect teaching from parents or schools or TV programs, dare I say, or movies, things like that. And so we don't always know how to manage conflicts. Relationships are the same as anything, you need to learn how to do it. You wouldn't just get into a car and start driving. You're taught how to do it correctly. And then, of course, once you start driving, you probably tweak it a little bit to work for you.
In the show, we saw the pressure of being married kind of boxed people in a bit. They felt just like, I need to get out of this. And sometimes in real life, we see people in relationships for years, and then they get married and it just seems to fall apart. Why do you think this happens? Do you think marriage just brings a new expectation to relationships?
I think the mistake that a lot of people make when they're in a relationship or when they're married is that they don't give themselves time to be themselves. I know for a lot of couples that I've worked with, they have sort of lost their individuality in a relationship. And so, for those that have then gone on to get divorced or break up, they are just a fragment of themselves. They don't know what they like anymore, what they enjoy, because they've only existed for so long as a couple. And so I think it's really important that if you're in a relationship, that you still invest in friendships, that you still go on a spa break or go and play golf, that you also have your own world and your own life. I think that is key.
And we also saw rejection and feelings of inadequacy a lot within the couples. What is your advice on handling rejection, particularly when it triggers feelings of insecurities or low self-esteem?
I think if you have come from a background where you've experienced a lot of rejection, then if you're now in a relationship, you may see rejection, in your face there and then, and that can be quite triggering. But you might think you've seen rejection. It might not actually be rejection. Sometimes it could be hard to work out which one it is, particularly when you've had a history of rejections. It's important to dig deep into our own self, away from the noise of people, to kind of really reflect, look inside and kind of work out what's going on here, and also maybe reach out to therapy, depending on how severe that feels for you. And if it was rejected, how can you handle this so that you feel empowered and so that you can kind of bring back and take back your power?
And I want to link that into the reunion dinner in the show. Many of the couples wanted to seek closure. What purpose do you think closure has, and is it always necessary?
If you don't get the closure that you need, then it's like a wound that's always opened, isn't it? So there's the potential for anything to kind of get in there to re-trigger it and to make it sore again. I think what can be difficult though with breakups is that you don't always get the closure that you need in that moment from your partner, let's say, or your ex-partner. So they may not be in that kind of emotional, mature space where they want to meet with you to discuss what happened, to apologize to each other, and to be able to kind of like in a healthy way move on. It might be a case that they have blocked you, or they have now sort of gone on social media and they've got a new partner. And I think you have to do what it takes in order to heal. If it's deleting them from your social media, if it's blocking them, but sometimes it can take years to really get full closure where the name of that person doesn't impact you anymore, or you can see them on social media and you think, meh, I'm good with that. And that can take time. And I think for a lot of people, we're in this kind of fast culture now, aren't we? So we want things to happen quickly. We want to not feel anything negative, and we want to be able to move on. But our bodies and minds don't always work like that.
How important do you think it is to know yourself and your morals and your values before getting into a relationship? And is it possible to discover that side of yourself while in a relationship?
I mean, how long do you wait to know yourself before you meet somebody, right? So I think you can do both. You can find yourself in a relationship. I think it's just about being able to separate yourself from the couple and also kind of find time for you as an individual as well. I always say to a lot of my clients to really be careful, who you have in what I call your inner circle. Your outer circle are your work colleagues and people on the train, people on the bus, people around you, and you can't always control those people that you kind of meet on a day-to-day basis. But your inner circle, those are your family, your friends. These should be people that you've chosen to bring out the best in you. And if you're around people and situations and things, and when I say situations or things, I'm also talking about things like social media. If you are sort of absorbing those types of situations and people, but it's bringing out a negative energy in you, then it's your responsibility to separate yourself from those things. And that's hard when it's family. But I think as you get older, you realize that even with family, if the behaviors are toxic and it's having an impact on your emotional well-being, you owe it to yourself to distance yourself from that person. And dare I say, if it's really toxic and having a detrimental effect on your mental well-being, to completely, sever ties with toxic situations, toxic people.
At the end of the series, there were 3 strong marriages, but also a few singles. So what would you say is your biggest red flag to avoid in the dating world and the biggest green flag to pursue?
It's a green flag, I can say straight away, someone who wants to talk about your relationship status, who can communicate about your feelings, their feelings, can work through conflict together. Someone that's not going to sort of, block you as soon as you say, I wasn't really happy when you said that. All of a sudden they sort of distance themselves and withdraw, and then you don't hear from them. I suppose I've just said a red flag just there, actually. So the red flag would be someone that does that, because I think if in the early stages you're sharing with someone that you're not happy with something that they've said or done, particularly if you're sharing it in a kind of non-confrontational way, and they take it really offensively, and then they block you, and then they come back and say, okay, well, let's talk about it, and they don't really want to talk about it that much, and all those types of behaviours, I would say run a mile, because you are going to experience that all the way through the relationship. And it's easier, I think, to walk away at the beginning when the emotions aren't so strong than it is further along down the line, where you're emotionally attached to somebody and they're in your world, and then you try to share something important with them and they react so negatively. They just can't.
Yes.
They can't show empathy, or they can't show compassion, or they can't work it out with you. For me, that's a full red flag. But equally, the green flag is someone that can communicate and speak to you and treat you with respect.
And finally, Charlene, what was your favorite part about the latest series of Married at First Sight?
Probably just all of the commitment ceremonies have been really quite beautiful to watch. I think even those who decide to split up, usually they come to some kind of closure on that couch. So that's quite a special place for me.